Hey everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rusty McConnell. I'm one of two aldermen serving for District 2 right here in Oconomowoc. I was actually elected in April, so this video is really long overdue. So before I get into it, I want to thank everyone who helped me on the campaign, everyone who supported me, helped me along the way. I really want to thank everyone who came out, voted, put their trust in me to represent their interests down at City Hall. Couldn't have done it without you guys. So one of the things I want to do as alderman is try to provide information about the discussions that are being had down at City Hall in a more digestible, easy to understand way. So my goal is to do these videos sometimes before meetings to let everybody know what topics are going to be discussed, or after meetings to kind of explain what happened. If you've ever seen one of the agendas, sometimes they can look really confusing. Super interesting things might not look so interesting, and some things that might look really interesting actually are not all that interesting. So hopefully I can break this down in a way that's easy for everyone to understand, and then start asking questions. Local government is best when everyone gets involved, also when everybody knows what's going on. So I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to post in this video or the description of this video where you can go to look to see the agendas for all of the committee meetings and the common council meetings. It's really important because a lot of things happen. They happen twice a month. So it's really important you stay involved. I'm also going to post a link where you can watch the videos on YouTube. If you have any questions or you want to see different topics from me, want to learn more, absolutely let me know. But I want to try to help get everybody engaged simply by knowing what's going on. All right. So let's get into the meeting from Tuesday night. So we had a Tuesday night. It was September 16th, I believe. It was last Tuesday, a few days ago. A bunch of things were discussed. All right. So first major thing of note is from the committee report. So if you're looking at the agenda right now, it's going to be number 8, section A. We voted to exempt Oconomowoc from the Waukesha County library levy, so a tax for libraries from Waukesha County. And this is something we do every year, so nothing to be concerned about. Basically, what happens is Waukesha County has a tax for municipalities under the county that don't fund their libraries in a state mandated amount. So basically, what that means is they're either underfunding the libraries, but most commonly, they don't have a library in their municipality. So their residents go to cities and towns that do, like Oconomowoc. We already fund our library up to that state mandated amount. So there's no need for us to collect any more taxes. There's no need for Waukesha to collect any more taxes for library because we fund our library. We have a great library. So nothing to be concerned about there. No reduction in service. It's all stay the same. There was a piece of business that I learned about. We do every single year. The next act, and this one had a lot of discussion, was the concession stand down at City Beach, otherwise known as Buddy's Beach Bungalow. So last year, the city did something really cool. We partnered with a private entity to build a building down at the beach that was going to have it's going to house concessions, lifeguards, and like a couple utility bathrooms is the other one. So rather than having the taxpayer, the city build all of that, we partnered with a private entity, which I think is something we should really look to explore more often. And we can use this instance to learn a couple things to make sure that process is a little bit better moving forward. So a lot of discussion was around some of the cost and excess of what we thought was going to happen. So the partnership looked a little like this, where the city said, okay, we're going to lease out the building for 10 years to the private entity and pay 200, and I think it was like 260,000 across the 10 years. So that was our contribution to the building of that building. And then the private entity who was building the building would be responsible for the building costs outside of that, and then run the concession stand for 15 years. And they said, okay, 15-year agreement, good enough for us to build a building. Okay. Now, the challenge is we had a lot of unexpected costs, specifically around placing the building where it's at because of sand, soil, water. Not super surprising there. And so once everything was all said and done, the cost of the building were a lot more than anticipated. There were also some delays from in both sides where we definitely needed to make sure we're hitting a time frame. But also we wanted to make sure our architecture committee wanted to make sure the building looked a certain way, and that caused some delays, which caused cost to increase a little bit. There were basically two sides to the discussion. The entity came to the council last Tuesday night and said, "Hey, it'd be great if you could split the excess cost with us." It was a lot more than we were anticipating. This is a building that the city is going to be using for bathrooms. It's a part of the City Beach Park. It would be great because we're in a partnership for the city to split those excess costs with us. And so the two sides of the argument basically, or the discussion, were side one is this person is a great partner to the city. They do a lot for the city. The building does look nice. We can definitely agree and disagree that the location of the building is optimal. But regardless, it is a nice looking building and it is very functional, right? So as a partner going into this, the city you should participate in some of the excess cost coverage, right? So that was one side of the argument, which I 100% understand. The other side of the discussion was the fact that the city did have a contract, right? And the contract said this was going to be our contribution. The private entity was responsible for building that particular building, and so the taxpayers really shouldn't be responsible for the excess cost, right? Um, and so this is where I kind of get into I think the private equity city partnerships are a really great thing. We need to do better at outlining the contracting of that, right? And so what happens in these instances? What is the checks and balances for cost? Outline who's responsible for what. So definitely some lessons learned here. The person who built this building is a phenomenal guy, owns a business here in Oconomowoc as well. We certainly don't want to do wrong by the partnership because we want to make sure we're inspiring more of these types of partnerships. But at the same time, we need to protect the taxpayer dollar as well. So this was a tougher discussion. And so ultimately, the council voted to take part in covering about half of the cost of the overages for that building. And so that's how everything works. And so that's what's going to happen moving forward. Me personally, moving forward, I want to make sure that these partnerships are locked up and make sure that both sides have a clear understanding of what should happen in these instances, and then that ultimately the taxpayer is protected from egregious overages. But again, we have a great building in our city beach. We have bathrooms down there, concession stand. Like I said, whether you think the building is in the right location or not, it is a very functional, high quality building. Ultimately, a good thing for our city. The second part of that was the lease for for their pontoon moorings. So currently, the person who owns the bungalow also has two boats that they lease out for people, and they pay the city for two mooring opportunities on LaBelle. So what we were doing is we were trying to figure out what that contract looks moving forward. It was requested that they get a 15-year extension on those particular leases for two spots on LaBelle. The council was not comfortable with 15 years. And so we definitely wanted to set some structure around who has opportunities to bid for those spots, make sure other local businesses have the ability to participate in that RFP and bidding for it. So as an act of good faith, we extended the contract for this particular person for 5 years, and then they're going to open it up to everybody else after 5 years. So I agree. The council felt like this was a really good compromise between what was being asked and what the lack thereof of process that needed to be shored up. So ultimately, this person is going to have um, 5 years, 5 additional years at a set rate. They pay more than the standard mooring rates for residents for this particular beast because it is a business. And then in 5 years, it's going to be open for bids, so anybody can participate in that. So I think that was great discussion, great decision, and compromise by the council. And then finally, this is all kind of under one grouping here, still in Section 8. The city has a new boat launch. It was quite a large project, a really expensive project, and very similar to the bungalow. We had some unforeseen costs, and costs that I personally think should have been foreseen and budgeted. But the net result is we were over budget on the boat launch cost, and the discussion is how are we going to fund that? Now that money has already been spent. We need to pay our bills, so kind of an unfortunate situation to be in. and I would be remiss if I didn't chastise the chastise is not the right word. Uh, Raise concern um, with the people in charge of the boat launch project. Very similar, like I did with the concession stand. But ultimately, what we did is we were going to fund those overages costs from our TID district right there. So it is not going to raise your taxes, but there will be less money returned to the taxing districts once that TID closes. So the argument is it's not going to affect the taxpayer. I disagreed with that argument. I do think there is an ultimate effect to the taxpayer. The benefit is there will be no increase in taxes to pay for that overage. So again, I'm from the standpoint that we absolutely have to do a better job at budgeting and planning these projects. It is concerning that we do routinely go over. So I think there's lots of opportunity to improve there. Now, I said TID and TIP. Those are things that most people have no idea about. So perhaps in a video, if any of you would like to learn more about what that means and how it's an economic tool to inspire development and growth, I would be happy to explain that in as much detail as I have. I'm not the expert, but I know enough to be dangerous. So happy to explain those type of things further. All right, moving on to another big one. This one got a lot of action on social media. Was changing the zoning for our for the village green. So whenever we change zoning or something like that, you're going to see those sandwich boards go up because it has to go to open comment. That's your chance to tell the city what you think about that. It is the village green. Everybody's incredibly passionate about that. And so there was a lot of concern that the move was to make the village green more accessible to development. And it's actually quite the opposite. So I'm going to combine the entire A, B, and C from section 9 into one kind of general comment. Basically what we did is we made the village green was broken into I think 4 or 5 parcels, and we decided to make it one big parcel with a little sliver right by where the parking lot is, so that's separate. So the most of the green is now under one single parcel. That's victory number one. Victory number two is we changed it. Each one of those parcels was zoned in a different way, so a couple of them are zoned commercial, which actually could very well be developed on, and the other were zone uh, institutional, I believe. I need to go back and check my notes on that one. But essentially, what we did is we combined them all in one and changed the zoning to urban park, and that protects the park from ever being developed, ever being used for uses outside of city approval and city use. So I know it was concerning. I know there was a lot of action on social media about this. The net result is we are protecting the city green. It had nothing to do with the proposed redesign that we'll talk about in just a little bit. But the city green is protected. It cannot be developed. It will not be sold. That is the net result of what we talked about there. So moving on to some of our new business, this should be section 10 if you're looking at the agenda, is taking a look at the Village Green proposed redesign. And so I spoke a lot about city private partnership at the beginning of this video, and this is going to come up again right now. So another one of these opportunities where the city has the ability to partner with a private entity that owns the building right by the city green to refresh that area and potentially add bathroom use or public bathrooms downtown on the Village Green. So we looked at a plan that was presented. The owners of that building contracted with a construction and design company and came up with a proposal for what this redesign could look like. Now, if you followed the Oconomowoc politics for at least a year, you know we went through quite a major vote earlier this year on a really grand redesign of the Village Green that ultimately was voted down. Now, we do believe that it's a great opportunity, right? It's a great space for Oconomowoc. We want to maintain as much green space as we possibly can. Um, but we also want to make sure that something that, is appealing and everybody can still use and we're proud of and is functional. And so the city has been working with the owners of this building design what could potentially look like public bathrooms, a redesign of the facade along that building, and all of that. Now, you have definitely, or well, not definitely, you probably have seen some designs. They've been on Facebook. I'll post a link to the news article here so you can take a look at it as well. Um, Looking at designs is hard, right? Because you don't have a concept for scale. One of the things that I want to emphasize with all this, because I've seen a couple of comments already, is we're not reducing parking in the back, and then secondly, the green space is actually not being reduced in size at all. So the footprint of the proposed bathrooms would not affect the total green space. In fact, the bathrooms only come out about 16 feet, which is where the planters come out now. So the overall footprint of the proposal is not significant. Now, it's hard to see that in the plan, so I certainly understand the concern. And so, what the council decided to do was delay any decision on that, whether we want to go to RFP or take any further steps until we have your input. So, all of the council members are reaching out to their districts. We're posting it on Facebook. It was in the newspaper today. What we want is we want public input, and so far it looks we're getting it, which is great. We want to know what you as a city, what you as the residents of Oconomowoc want with the Village Green, and we're going to make a decision to try and best reflect that. So the redesign is by no means a done deal. We don't have pricing on it yet. We're still working on what the partnership, as I mentioned earlier, with the private entity would be. It's very infant, but before we start moving any further on this particular topic, we want input. So this is definitely your time to get involved. Reach out to me, reach out to your other aldermen, voice your opinions, take a look at the plans. If you don't understand something, ask. That's what we want. There's going to be a public information session on September 27th, I believe. I will write in the comments the exact date, but look out for that. So, public information session where you get to meet the architects and designers and then ask a lot of questions and figure out what exactly is going on. And then this will come up for discussion again on October 7th before the Common Council meeting and the committee as a whole, and then I believe again for the last meeting in October. So again, by no means is this a done deal. We are in fact waiting for input, so we really want you to provide input there. Um, the rest of it was pretty much business as not substantial business. So if you have any specific questions, certainly reach out to me. Those were the really big points that I wanted to talk about tonight. We do have budgets coming up, so voting on budget over the next we have a couple workshops coming up. So if you care about where Oconomowoc is spending their money, how much money we're spending, where money's coming in, where money's going out, great opportunity for you to take a look. Ask me if you have questions, voice your opinions, things like that. Okay, that was a lot. All right. So I think my video is up to 17 minutes, which for me, I'm breathy. That's not super surprising. But like I said, I want to start doing these at least every week, or at least every council meeting week. Like I said, I'll do some before, I'll do some after. I want to find ways to keep everybody involved. If you have suggestions, let me know. I would love to meet every single one of you if possible. I know it's going to be impossible, but would love to meet you. So if you see me walking down the road, say hi. Let's grab coffee sometime, and let's get everybody engaged and excited about what's going on in Oconomowoc. You guys have a great night. Thank you.